Robert Mundell, the Nobel Prize-winning economist and a Columbia University professor, will also be at the meeting, but I'm pleased to say that he's with me now. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Now, just let me understand exactly how you're concerned about this crisis. We still don't have any news on the banks. We don't exactly know what's going on with the periphery countries. Is this going to get much worse before it gets better?
Well, it is. We're right in the middle of the crisis now. You can see in this week and the next week unfolding in a very big way. The Greek situation is the most worrisome, and the threat there is very great. It's a situation that if this there's a faltering or a break, a default or something, it would spread like wildfire. But it's not just a crisis of the sovereign debt instruments, but a crisis of the banks. The banks have spread it, and this is also now very much a global situation. It's going to spread to the United States because a lot of American banks hold assets in these weak countries, and this would spread. So it's very much the rule here is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what you can do, like in the case of the Lehman crash, if that had been prevented, the cost of shoring it up afterwards is 10 times the cost of...
But are we really risking another Lehman Brothers type situation? I know there's a lot of concern about certain European banks, especially the French banks. Is this what concerns you the most?
Yes, it could be like that, because just before the Lehman crash on September 15th, 2008, nobody expected anything like what would happen afterwards, and it headed to the major companies that were involved in this. To, the companies, not just Citibank, but also General Motors and Chrysler and so on.
So what do we need to do if a bank goes? If we have a Lehman type brother event, is it going to be one of the French banks that are going to go? Or do you also have concerns about the Italian banks?
Well, yes. I think the Italian banks are not in at the forefront of the problem now. I think the French banks are in a big way. Of course, the Greek banks were, because a lot of the Greek banks hold a bulk of the government assets.
And then you think that this crisis, this banking crisis, is then going to spread in the United States. Will we need to recapitalize some of the banks in the U.S. as well?
Well, it's not just a matter. It's a matter of if it spreads in a big way, it could involve the failure of a lot of weak banks and even some of the investment companies. You hear just today in the newspaper the threat, the rumor that Morgan Stanley has $38 billion of these assets and so on. Now, there's an argument that may not be true, but it's just symptomatic of this. If a small bank like that has these assets, think of what the bigger banks in the U.S. have.
But so concretely, what exactly needs to be done now? Do we need to find a worldwide plan to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Yes, and it's going to be hard to make that plan because people don't have no one person has a clear understanding of all the ins and outs of these things. I think that it's got to start at the major thing. The major issue is the Greek solution first, to start that off. If that can be solved, if Europe can show that they can solve that with IMF help, of course, then that will be the first step in the process, and then it will start to shore up the other things. If you can save the Greek situation from major default, then you're going to help. You're not going to have that big weakness of the banking system.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Robert Mundell. Real pleasure to speak to you every time. The Nobel Prize-winning economist and Columbia University professor speaking to us here live from Berlin.